All right, just finished recording. I'm more of a downer post about the state of WoW with Bellular. Let's see if key differences between WoW and 14 can be a little bit brighter.
We've got one from Dastil, who said, got both FF lore books and love it. What is your favorite part about the lore? Also, the frustration is the problem. Also, the frustration is the problem that causes toxicity, not you.
Of course.
Yeah. I mean, that's it, yeah. I think, like, some of those, you know, people, they see negativity around WoW, and they take it like a personal attack. They try to be really snide and weird and sort of whataboutismed. Sort of purposefully missing the point.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think they maybe don't understand that it's like, no, people are genuinely fucking frustrated. That's what it is. And a lot of people are, because that's the thing. If we were just speaking a whole bunch of shite, if we were just stirring the pot for no good reason, people would see that content and be like, the fuck off, mate. That's bullshit. People obviously quite broadly agree with us. So...
yeah, I think people.
That's what it is.
People are angrier when they hear a truth they don't want to hear. When they're told a lie, and I think a lot of it is, like, you can kind of technically extend this to even when you're being a dipshit, but the problem lies in the emotional reaction to what you're saying as opposed to what you're saying.
It's also that current WoW has so many reasons to be upset right now. There are times that I phrase something wrong, or I get an aspect of something wrong, and then I'm just wrong. But there are also times that in the comments, instead of telling me I'm wrong in a way that's objectively provable or is a fair take, it's just different than mine. This is a bad take because I feel differently. This is a bad take because from my perspective, things are different, because I have a different set of priorities, a different set of objectives, and a different background on the same subject. And with WoW right now, they've equally frustrated so many of those perspectives that somebody's like, well, I don't like that they're doing items number 1 and 2. And somebody over here is like, right? 3 and 4 is the worst. And so, like, they've unilaterally screwed everybody identically. And so, outside of new players and people that are sitting back in older content because they haven't gone backwards and screwed that, I think a lot about the way Chromie Time works is opening up things to people. I think a lot about the way they've continued to keep old content in the game since basically Cataclysm, where they don't really delete things anymore. And so people who are just discovering Darkmoon Faire for the first time, and they're just going back and grinding up some old raid achievements and getting some mounts for the first time, for them it's still really fun. But for anybody that's tied to current content, the game's in an incredibly rough spot. And so for them, it's really easy to be like, yeah, I'm frustrated. Me too. Even though those players might normally disagree.
Yeah.
It's just when you're speaking the truth and their emotional reaction is a problem, it's a problem. Like, there's...
Yeah. We've got from Dastil. No, wait, we've still got... Sorry.
Yeah, you just said that.
I'm really tired right now. I can barely string his heads together. Who said, I mean, the FF lore books.
Yeah.
I hear they are great, and I also hear they're great for, like, not being required. They're, like, genuinely, nice to have, but not needed, unlike some of the WoW stuff. As for what my favorite part of the lore is, I mean, honestly, I just think the whole A Realm Reborn thing is really cool in how they dealt with kind of remaking the game. So that's my answer. But that's because I'm only like level 31 or 32 or something.
Yeah.
And, I'm quite early.
That was like the world's lightest and most spoiler-free response to a loaded question like that.
Early on in my journey.
Yeah, there's... it's weird because the only thing the thing I like the most is actually stuff that's happened in stuff that pertains to the very end of, like, Shadowbringers, the 5.3 stuff. And I think it's kind of... I'll say it in like, absolutely zero spoilers, but it's the meta-narrative that they establish and draw in on around that time in 5.3 that I remember sitting back in my chair and going, holy shit. Holy shit. It's how they play with... almost kind of similar to what Final Fantasy Origin is attempting to do in a way, where it has this... There is a current underlying it that is paying homage to the entirety of Final Fantasy and what the series has historically stood for and will stand for. And I think
Matt might actually overbuild it. Not because it doesn't pay that off, but because he sets the expectation so high that it doesn't allow you any room to be surprised. I love how passionate he is, but this whole like, it will literally change your life. This has enlightened me in ways that no faith or exposure to knowledge in a classroom or work experience has ever given me. This has defined all of gaming and media in general. I think it starts to like set it so high where like you're like, okay, it was the best experience I ever had, and that only made it to here. So I would say like within the MMORPG space, Shadowbringers is one of the best experiences I have ever had, and it is a quality level where if every MMO expansion I ever play from here on out is not as good, there is still room for those to still be considered good. There is still room underneath Shadowbringers for me to be perfectly satisfied with this genre because it really has set a bar for me by which I will judge future expansions. It is not for me the be-all end-all of all of gaming. It has not redefined my marriage or my life. I am enjoying it immensely, and it makes me look forward to Endwalker, and it has given me a perspective of Final Fantasy XIV that has encouraged me to go back and do things from previous expansions that I was otherwise not going to do. So I do think it's an incredibly high bar, but sometimes I think Matt is like so passionately over the top for it that it's like, and it also made it to where I don't have to take vitamins in the morning anymore. And what's amazing is before I used to have knee problems, don't even have knee problems. I also had a hard drive issue on my computer and it fixed it. And so like... he kind of lets it just like keep spiraling out of control until it's just this like, it actually made other Final Fantasy games better. Other ones, unrelated games. I think it might have even improved the Avengers launch. And so a huge portion of that is that absolutely Flubby Dog's in chat bringing up that his favorite game of all time is Nier and his second favorite game is Final Fantasy XIV. So for perspective, to keep his view in context for any of you that are progressing through this and going, do I need to have like a special chair to sit in for this level of emotional earthquake? He is playing his second favorite game of all time a ton, while one of his colleagues, possibly closest friends, I don't know their relationship, is getting into the game for the first time at the same time that there is a crossover event where they brought his favorite game into this one as the main 24-man content that got its own story, that got 3 iterations of 24-man things where we got to go fight bosses. And so for him, Shadowbringers did mow his lawn. For him, Shadowbringers did actually make it easier for him to find, wholeness in his relationships, and he lost weight and he can run a faster mile time, and so for him, Shadowbringers is probably verging on that religious experience. It actually is the first thing to ever make Chuck Norris really fear anything at all ever. And so for him, it did that. And so, Monster saying it cured your asthma. That's amazing. But like, results may vary. So for people that are like, oh, well, Nier wasn't really my thing, or I've never even heard of Nier. All right. Oh, well, like, I played ARR and Heaven's Word back in the day. It's not really my thing. I'm coming back to Stormblood and it's kind of fuzzy. Okay, well, Shadowbringers is probably just going to be a really good game for you. But like, that should be okay. Like, it is. It's a good game, even if it doesn't bring back your childhood dog. It's a good game, even if it doesn't cure a chronic disease. And so every time he talks about it, it's always a question like this where it's like, Michael, what's your favorite thing? I really liked the music in Gridania and the way the light played off the trees. What's your favorite thing? My favorite thing. Whoa! It's like, Matt, you already converted him. Michael's already playing. You're good. You're good. You're good. It's okay.
Actually, like, you could almost feel the love dripping from the words that are written
Dripping
for the entire idea, for the entire series, and the kind of all the lore stuff surrounding that, and how everything abstract corresponds to a feeling in the players. It's so good, so good.
Well, it'll be fun when I get there.
Yep.
Similar, actually, we got from Balthazar. Hello, I finished Stormblood.
like, whoa then.
Is this going to replace the Friday stream? Felt disconnected in Stormblood, but Yotsu and... Huh?
Yotsu.
Oh, Yotsu and Alamigo was alright. I don't know what that means because I'm not in Stormblood yet. This is replacing the Friday stream. If you check the pinned message in the messages, then you will know why.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes.
So there was a previous video we reacted to where he talked about not wanting to stream the game and not wanting to, but maybe possibly finding a way to share his reactions as he goes instead of just weekly updates. And I kind of now want like a side-by-side with Michael and Matt. Like where Michael was like, that is impressively good gameplay. And Matt's like, it's just like back and forth.
Stormblood. I hear that Stormblood, like, it's got some pacing issues versus Heavensward and Shadowbringer, so not surprised.
Yeah. I disagree with people who think Stormblood is worse than Heavensward, but I can see completely why you would think that.
Gotcha. I mean, I'm interested to like see that for myself and just kind of experience, I guess, these two pretty different feeling, ways of doing a story. Yeah. Dude Raccoon, 14 player for about a year now. Your vids in WoW compared to 14 made me give WoW a shot. Oh, wow. I can't seem to get interested at all. I like my Outlaw Rogue, but the content makes me tired and bored. I guess it depends on where you are with the content, because certainly if you're an FF player and you are used to leveling a character in the MSQ of, like, say, an FF expansion, right? Like, maybe you start or whatever. The WoW storytelling is not as good as the expansions, and you're not going to have as much fun in that way. Generally, the way that people enjoy WoW leveling is just kind of like leveling quickly and the kind of boom, 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 boom of the character going up.
Yeah.
I think with WoW, it's like, if you want to enjoy the leveling more, get add-ons like Immersion that are really useful for that.
Immersion will do, like, the fact that Immersion isn't, like, rolled into the base game.
Yeah, kind of wild,
disgusting, like.
Yeah. Now, as for the content, I mean, it's kind of tricky. I guess, like, as a 14-player WoW would be quite like a whoa.
So, without being a huge lore-based MMO player, I feel that I know a lot more WoW lore than I do 14 because of the amount of times that it's kind of been voiced in various ways, and because there's these big overall trends, and you kind of catch these little tidbits and put the picture together instead of like, oh, you weren't there for that one specific set of events on this very narrow storyline that is the primary story of 14. And so it's easier to kind of just consume general things and build this picture of what the world of Warcraft is. I will say that when I finished Shadowbringers, it encouraged me to go back and dive into lore that I had missed within 14 for not caring, and to learn more about this thing that is Shadowbringers, because now Shadowbringers, I finished it, I'm done with it, and I want more, and the way to get more is to get more from it, because there's not going to be more of it added, and so I can go back and I can learn these things, and then when I replay Shadowbringers, maybe there's a deeper portion there that I can enjoy a second time, and I can re-experience it for the first time a second time. And so I'm really looking forward to that. And at the same time, I thought, you know what? I have a deep love for WoW. Not really thrilled with current content, which has been true for a while now. I'm going to go back and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start an Alliance and a Horde character. I'm going to play through their opening zones. I'm going to read every single quest. I'm going to read every single one. I'm going to get to know it. And I will say that, not for better or worse, let's just view it in depth. The depth of Final Fantasy versus WoW, playing it as a game, it was a great game. I had a blast through A Realm Reborn, Heavensward, and Stormblood, not as a story-based player. So, love for the game, totally separate. But as depth of understanding, as depth of involvement in the game itself, adding story in addition to my love for the gameplay is a deeper experience. Not necessarily all better. There's aspects of the game that I actually like less because of it. But it's deeper. And so by going back I'm feeling deeper. And the more of the game I clear on that other character, the deeper it gets. And I went through WoW, and I cleared my first zone, and then I got into Loch Modan, and then I cleared my first zone, and I cleared the Barrens, and I'm progressing through this, and I'm like, this mostly just makes me ask more questions. Like I didn't actually feel it deepened my experience. I feel I get a deeper understanding of the world by going and spending more time in old raids that I didn't do that much of, and going and running more dungeons, and I feel that I get exposed more to the texture of the world by seeing more of it, not spending more time in a smaller section of it. The broader my experience is, the more systems I interact with, the more expansions that I'm aware of, the bigger my achievements get as far as a total set of my log, the more I like the world of Warcraft, the more I like the lore in it, the more I'm glad that we went to a certain place or we interacted with a certain person. The bigger the world gets, the more every little thing matters to me. And in Final Fantasy, the more I spend in one zone, the better the whole world gets. So they're exactly opposite in that way. And as somebody that is just learning to like lore in games, that I traditionally go to for their community aspect, these MMOs, I'm finding this a really odd experience as a way of realizing I want to know the Warrior of Light and the people that surround them, and I want to know Azeroth and the people that impact it. The way you go at those is not the same. The way you get to those two objectives, which I feel mimic each other, is not the same.
Just like in WoW, how gilded you really need to be to have a good experience.
Yeah,
versus the queued experience of FF14 being better than WoW's queued experience. The best I can say there about content is, like, it depends on your level, but ultimately you want to find a guild, and if you're doing dungeons, stuff like that, do it with people you intend to stick with. Yeah, because that's when the incentives are aligned and it's a good experience. Yeah, as for the content making you tired and bored, it's not thing like, a raid does the opposite for me. It makes me engaged and excited.
Yeah.
It's just, WoW raids are generally, I think a bit less visually flashy than an FF raid, but like mechanically they do get quite deep and complex and are, in my view, extremely fun.
I can
It's peak video game content.
I can see, especially if you're doing something like M+, I can see how that general style of gameplay completely wouldn't mesh.
Yeah.
Because it's just so unbelievably different. Like the entire idea of the specifically controlling CC, all of the tab targeting for the right interrupts, all that stuff's kind of weird for an FF player, where it's so much more focused on movement.
Yeah.
Which is not something that World of Warcraft is particularly heavy on. Which means
that's
that,
like way into its positionals and stuff.
Which means that it can feel significantly more boring. And not even just positionals, I mean like literally raid mechanics. Where you can spend so much time in WoW raid. Like if you don't get targeted by mechanics, you can stay still for so long. If you're in the right place.
Very true, very true. I sometimes forget that I'm a hunter and I generally enjoy, doing the trapping for the dogs, Barghast and stuff. Yep. But like sometimes if you're just like, hello, I am the turret. Then, you can stand there for a while. But I love WoW raids. I imagine I'll really enjoy the FF ones as well. So I need to level that character up. Maybe when I get some forced downtime over the weekend, I'll be able to do that.
They're definitely different in what you focus on. The games are definitely different in where you're going to have the path of least resistance. If you're willing to push for it, both games can give you a lot of the same experiences. But if you're following the path of least resistance, the meta, if you will, the games are definitely going to get you there differently. And if you're willing to let the class you play and the starting zone you're in and the way you play be driven by that, WoW and 14 are going to deliver two very different experiences to you. But they both have a giant mountain of content that mimics each other when you list out what the components of that mountain are, and the order of them doesn't matter. When you start to talk about what's the foundational section of that mountain and is the largest amount of content, what's the pinnacle and the shiniest portion of that content, where do things fit in between, they are built differently. They are two different mountains, but they are both huge mountains of content that are titans in this industry, and they have gotten to the fan bases they have not for their moments of weakness, not for the unprecedented disaster of 1.0, not for the frustrations currently surrounding Shadowlands, but for the moments of triumph that they've had and the amount of time that they've continued to show up and put out content that people were willing to enjoy. Those are the times that the mountains get bigger. Those mountains have been shaken. The World of Warcraft mountain is bigger, but it's been shaken a lot more times. It's had whole expansions that people consider something they didn't enjoy. Whole expansions that people feel they wish they would have missed or they're happy they missed. But it also has whole expansions that people wish they would have played or are bummed that, you know, they missed or want to go back to. And so it is not that there's just, oh, well, WoW content's always been average or bad. No, there have been wonderful times in World of Warcraft. What Final Fantasy is doing well right now is that they seem to be able to chain multiple expansions that people like back together. Like ARR is considered slow; it's the oldest, and Stormblood is considered by some and not as good as Heavensward. And so, if we consider that a failure on 14's point, there was still a lot of things about Stormblood. It still has some of my favorite trials in the game. It still has some of these singular moments that I really love, even though the whole expansion didn't mean that much to me compared to Heavensward. Like, just compared to Heavensward, if we consider that 14's failure moment, which is not a Warlords of Draenor level failure, you still have Shadowbringers right now being considered an overwhelming success, going into Endwalker in an overwhelming success, where WoW is coming off BFA, which was frustrated by many, many players, going into Shadowlands, which is currently frustrating many, many players. So it's good followed by good, bad followed by bad, and that's why the current discussions around them are so centered on one is bad, one is good. But when you look at the history of these games, they both have a diverse history with catastrophic failure and with overwhelming, unpredictable levels of success, and they have both given a huge number of players, many of which are the same players shared by them, a lot to be happy with and a lot to make them feel comfortable telling you if you've never tried either one of these games, they're absolutely worth trying as a new player. Both of them. It's just that when you get to current content, you may not like them identically depending on when you get to current content and what you're looking for when you get there. Because odds are one of them will feel like exactly what you'd been building towards, and one of them will feel like it was only really worth it, kinda.